When you think about the Eastern Front in World War II, what comes to mind? Probably images of men, right? But what if I told you that in the Soviet Union's massive fight against Nazi Germany, almost 1 million women were right there in the thick of it? And I'm not just talking about medics and clerks, I mean frontline combat soldiers, snipers, pilots, machine gunners. This is their story. Okay, so let's start with a number. During what the Soviets called the Great Patriotic War, this many people, 11,635, were given the absolute highest honor for bravery you could get. It was called the Hero of the Soviet Union. Now, out of all those thousands of heroes, guess how many were women? Just 92. Think about that. A tiny, tiny fraction. It just goes to show you what an incredible uphill battle it was. So what on earth did it take for a woman to earn that kind of recognition? And listen, this Hero of the Soviet Union title, it wasn't just some medal you pinned on your chest. No way. This was a life-changing status. Suddenly you got a pension, you got priority for housing, free travel. They'd even named streets after you. It basically set you apart from everyone else. So you can imagine, the journey to get one, especially if you were a woman, was just extraordinary.
All right, so that brings up a big question, right? How did these women even get to the front lines in the first place? I mean, how did they get into a position to do these incredible things? As you can guess, it was anything but easy.
Well, for a lot of them, it started with a call to action from a really famous female pilot named Marina Ruskova, who put together these all-women flight regiments. For others, though, the quickest ticket to the front was actually getting a Red Cross medical certificate. But just getting there was only half the battle. The real test started once they arrived. They had to prove to all the skeptical male commanders and even the soldiers next to them that they weren't just there to, endure the fight. They were there to lead it. And you can really see their impact in these moments of total chaos. Picture this: battle-hardened soldiers, men, pinned down by enemy fire, completely stuck. And then, all of a sudden, a woman gets up and just charges forward. That sight could totally electrify an entire unit, giving them the courage to rally and follow her. It was this wild, unexpected thing that could literally turn the tide of a battle. It really proved that courage, well, it has no gender. So all this bravery, it created what we could call the official story. These larger-than-life, celebrated tales of female heroes that the whole country looked up to. They were basically legends. So let's dive into a couple of them. First up, the pilots. The Germans had a name for them: Nachthexen, the night witches. They call them that because of this spooky whooshing sound their planes made. And get this, the planes they were flying were these old Polikarpov Po-2s. We're talking biplanes made of plywood and canvas. They were basically museum pieces before the war even began. Super slow, no guns for defense, just incredibly vulnerable. But here's the brilliant part. They turned that weakness into a weapon. They only flew at night. As they got close to a target, they would cut their engines completely and just glide in silently, drop their bombs, and then fire the engine back up and get out of there. They'd race back, rearm, and go do it all over again, sometimes flying up to 10 missions in a single night. Can you imagine? It was just this relentless and frankly terrifyingly dangerous way to fight. And then you have Lyudmila Pavlichenko. When the war started, she was just a history student at Kyiv State University, but she immediately volunteered, and she made one thing very clear. She wasn't there to be a nurse. She was there to fight. I mean, her own words say it all. She had the option, but she flat out refused. The recruiting officer kind of laughed at her when she said she was a sharpshooter, but she pulled out a certificate to prove it. She was absolutely determined to be on the front lines, not somewhere safe behind them. And boy, did she prove them wrong. On the front lines, she became an absolute legend. We're talking 309 confirmed kills. That includes taking out 36 other enemy snipers. She got so famous, so important as a symbol, that the Soviet High Command actually pulled her out of combat. They were terrified of losing her. So instead, they sent her on a tour of the Allied countries. She even met President Roosevelt at the White House. She literally became the international face of the Soviet woman in combat. Okay, so that's the legend, that's the propaganda poster. But behind all of that, behind the medals and the fame, there is a completely different story, a much darker one. This is the story that the women themselves started to tell many, many years later. This is what they called the unwomanly face of war. This feeling that they just couldn't forget, it was something you heard from so many of these veterans. For them, you see, The war wasn't some event in the past that just ended. No, it was something they carried inside them every single day, like a ghost that would never, ever leave. And this is where their stories get really fascinating. When you look at the oral histories, you see this huge difference. When the men talked about the war, it was all about strategy, troop movements, and victories. But when the women talked, they remembered the smell of a burning body, the bright color of blood on white snow. They remembered all the little details of trying to hold on to your humanity in a world that had gone completely insane. It's like they remembered two completely different wars. So remember that heroic image of Pavlichenko, the legendary sniper? Well, now listen to how another female sniper described her job. This had nothing to do with glory. It was about lying in a ditch for 12 hours straight as the snow melted around you, soaking you in freezing water. Your body goes numb. Sometimes you literally freeze to the ground. That was the grueling, painful reality behind the legend. And that contrast right there is really the heart of their story. You've got the official symbol of heroism on one side, that shiny gold star medal. And on the other side, you have the actual face of a woman who had to live through absolute hell to earn it. The official story is all about victory, but the personal story, that's about survival and trauma. And the trauma was just unspeakable. One veteran tells this story about a young nurse in her unit. She was only 19 years old when she was captured. When they finally retook the village, they found her body horribly mutilated. And when they looked in her knapsack, they found letters from home and a little green rubber bird, a child's toy. See, the war wasn't just about soldiers killing soldiers. It was about the brutal, horrific murder of innocence itself. So what happens next? What happens when these women who have seen and done and endured all of this finally get to go home? Well, the victory they fought so hard for, it brought a whole new set of ghosts with it. You'd think they'd be welcomed home as heroes, right? But that's not always what happened. Not even close. One veteran remembers her husband's mother crying when they got married. Not tears of joy, but tears of shame. "Who have you married?" she cried. "A frontline girl?" Marrying one was seen as a disgrace. It could even ruin the chances of her husband's younger sisters getting married. Can you believe it? Their incredible service, their sacrifice, it became a source of shame. And the damage wasn't just social. The physical and psychological toll was just immense. Years after the war, one woman went to a doctor for all these mysterious aches and pains. The doctor was stunned. He told her, "To have ruined your whole nervous system by the age of 24, how are you going to live?" She was only 24. The invisible wounds, the stuff you can't see, those were permanent. And maybe the most painful part of all, the very things that made them heroes at the front were turned against them back home. One woman tells this heartbreaking story of her husband blaming their child's disability on her. He said, "Would a normal woman have gone to war, learned to shoot? That's why you can't have a normal child. It's just devastating." Society asked them, begged them to become soldiers, and then it punished them for being good at it. So that leaves us with this one big question. What is the true face of war? Is it the heroic, smiling face of Lyudmila Pavlichenko on a propaganda tour celebrated by presidents? Or is it the haunted face of a survivor who can't forget the smell of a burning village or the little toy bird in her dead friend's bag? The truth, as these women's incredible stories show us, is so much more complicated and so much more painful than any single legend could ever capture.